everyone, I'm Arlene Dickinson. Thanks for joining me on my podcast. I have been a longtime partner of TELUS because I value the support they provide to both local businesses and entrepreneurs. Recently, TELUS launched Stand With Owners. It's an initiative that's targeted to support Canadian small businesses during COVID-19 because now more than ever, we could all use a bit of help. And that's why TELUS and I have partnered to provide all of my listeners with an exclusive limited time offer. Right now, if you bring your business to TELUS, you can receive 20% off a mobility plan for business, and you also get the first 3 months free. That's right, free. Visit TELUS.com/reinvention to redeem this offer. Welcome to this week's episode of Reinvention. I wanted to have a podcast on the topic of reinvention because the world is changing all around us. There is so much going on, and we're all taking a moment to pause and think about what our society needs to be and what we want to be as individuals. And so I wanted to have conversations with people who have gone through the process of reinvention, people who were going to have genuine, authentic conversations, let their guard down, and talk about what it's like to do the hard work to get yourself on a new path. I hope these stories and these conversations are helpful. I hope you learn something from them, and I hope you are successful in your own path to reinvention. Listen in on the conversation I now have with Tessa Virtue. She's a world-class figure skater, and she now has to reinvent herself into the next stage of her life. Tessa, thanks for joining me on this podcast on reinvention and kind of what you're up to and just generally about life right now, which has definitely taken a turn, right?
It has, yeah. Thank you so much for having me, Arlene. I really appreciate it. What a pleasure. But you're right. These are unprecedented times.
Yeah. Now, where are you isolating yourself right now?
I'm in Vancouver.
In Vancouver.
Yeah. And are you in Calgary?
I'm in Calgary right now. Yes. Yeah. So are you at home or whereabouts are you?
I'm at my boyfriend's.
Uh-huh.
So we've been together, which has been quite nice, just to be able to spend this quality time together.
And where does he plays for which team?
Toronto.
And you're in Vancouver?
Yeah, he spends his summers here usually. He was raised in West Vancouver.
Oh, that's very cool. Well, my daughter just moved out to Vancouver.
Oh, it's wonderful. Have you gotten much time to visit her out here?
No, not since this has happened. I mean, she literally, she fell in love like you. So she fell in love and she's moved to Kitsilano. So
nice.
Yeah, are you close? Are you somewhere close there?
Not far. I'm quite familiar with Kits, but what a great spot for her to be in.
Well, I have to hook you guys up because, and actually, Tessa, the first time I believe I met you was in Vancouver. I don't know if you will remember that or not.
I was trying to think about that today. I was wondering when we first came in contact, because I know that now whenever there's an event that we both are at, we sort of find our way to each other across crowded rooms, and it's always a breath of fresh air.
Please save me from this crazy.
Exactly.
We're both going, oh, it's enough. I don't know, like you probably get inundated way more than I do, but I last time I saw you at an event is exactly what we both did. We were both kind of going, I don't really want to be here, do you? And you're going, no, I don't really want to be here either. Well, that's all right.
Was Vancouver we first met? Was that around the Olympics?
It was. So I was actually, just prior to this call, I actually went online because I watched your gold medal performance live at the Vancouver Olympics. And I was watching it, and it honestly made me cry. Like because I remember, it makes me cry just thinking about.
It's so neat to connect with people who were actually in the building with us, because and at the beginning of our Olympic journey, we had no idea just the magnitude of what a games represented and how many people were tuning in. So we feel so intimately intertwined with the 14,000 or so people that were in the Peony that day.
And it was just, you know what, when I think back to it, I'm sorry, I don't know why it makes me so emotional.
Oh, that's so kind. I just want to jump through the computer screen.
Okay, so Arlene cries first minute into the, aren't I supposed to be making you cry? You're not supposed to be making me cry.
I'll get there.
I don't think I'm supposed to be crying. But at the end of the day, and here I am touching my face, which is exactly what you're not supposed to be doing, but it's okay. I'm isolated by myself, so I think I'm safe. So that moment in the arena, I remember actually I was there with somebody in the time, and he wanted to go watch the skiing. And I said, I am absolutely not missing this event for anything. So he went off to the skiing event, and I can't remember which downhill it was. And I said, no, I'm going to stay. So I was there literally by myself watching you in the crowd. And I've never been so enraptured with a performance in my life as I was that day. And because I think you guys came out, and I actually remember what you were wearing. You weren't going to be remembered as the girl wearing the red dress. It was the white dress. It was the white outfit, right? Mm-hmm. And you both looked so calm and peaceful, and your movements were so in synchronicity. And it was just a beautiful moment for Canada.
Thank you. It's hard to believe that was a decade ago. And being here in Vancouver, there are so many reminders of what that process was like, not just for me as an athlete, whether that was Port Moody, our training site, or Deep Cove, where my family stayed, but for Canada, like what a legacy was left as far as home country games and the volunteer force, and all of those memorable moments from Alex Bilodeau to the gold medal hockey game.
Yeah, I can. And I'm sure, you talk about it all the time. So probably as a different kind. And I'm sure it's a very different memory as a result of that. But you're right. It was 10 years ago. You were 21 years old. You literally, or were you quite 21? Were you?
I was not yet, but almost. Yeah, I was 20.
And you just had a birthday. So happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Yes. Now, to let you go back 10 years later, and you think about how much you're reinventing yourself. But I want to kind of start with, because when I think about you being 20 years old, I mean, I was getting married when I was 20 years old. I was 19, actually, when I first got married, Tessa. Yeah, and started having children. And then I think about all the things that you did to reach that pinnacle of athleticism and sports at that age. And then you stop, and then you go, what's next? Like, what happens? Like, what happens to athletes who are at the very prime of their competitive selves and age? And then what do you do? What do you come home and go, no, what am I going to do?
Well, we faced that twice. After the 2014 games, we decided to retire, or so we thought. We were stepping back from the sport, and we had an opportunity to sort of exhale, take a breath, say yes to some new opportunities. And it turned out at that point that we were eager to get back to sport and the structure of training and a purposeful goal that we felt we still had more potential to explore. But that brief moment in time helped us prepare for post 2018, which was still a challenge because, as you know, I mean, after any kind of high, there's just such a crash. There's such a low, and it was exactly in that moment that everyone expected so much from us. And, for Olympians and athletes, it's such a short window to not sound mercenary, but to capitalize on that kind of exposure. And it was a really interesting time going from, one focus of being the best in the world, trying to peak at the exact right time, having a team around us helping to facilitate that, to suddenly floundering and trying new things and trying to redefine myself and, find a new path, a new challenge that excited me as much. And that took time.
Did you feel like the world was watching every move you made too? So it made even harder probably to figure out what you wanted to do because you knew that everybody was going to judge everything you thought of, right?
A little bit. And I mean, I'm also aware of the fact that while sometimes it felt like that, our success and our notoriety that came with that was just so small. Like it was just, a drop in a windshield. It wasn't really anything compared to most actual celebrities, but
you can't say that.
There's a certain pressure and of course a responsibility that comes with acting in the right way, especially when you're in the public eye. Sure. Do you feel that kind of pressure? I mean, everyone is, ready to critique any and every move you make.
Yeah, I think maybe with age, I've gotten more immune to it. I mean, I certainly, and I've never been on the world stage the way you've been on the world stage. And I can only imagine the pressure, especially at the age you were at, when this all started to become, when you became famous at such a young age and have all that pressure and all that, all the I guess judging that goes on. It's bad enough that you have judges judging, your profession. It's even worse when you have the world judging it and judging from afar. And you were under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, from my perspective, I find it, I found I spent a lot of time, and maybe too much time, thinking about how I looked or how I sounded, or did I have the right clothes on. Or I was more concerned sometimes about my outer appearance than I was about who I was inside, and I know that sounds crazy, but you really do have to hold on to yourself in the amongst fame. You have to hold on to who you are, because it gets taken away bit by bit.
You're right. And it doesn't sound crazy, Arlene. I think especially when you're on TV and you have producers and an audience and directors telling you how to look and act. I mean, you were expected to fill a certain role, and I can only imagine that kind of pressure that comes with it. But yeah. I mean, is there anything you wish you could tell your 25-year-old self as it relates to that?
Yeah, I think I would definitely, I know a lot of people say this all the time, but I always say that I wish that I would have cared a lot less about what other people thought about me, and focus more about what I wanted to do versus what other people expected of me. So right. I think we focus, I don't know, what about you? What would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I think probably on that same vein. I mean, I'm a people pleaser and perfectionist through and through. And so, I'm still trying to balance that with just giving myself the freedom to be and explore and fall and fail and try things without, going to bed and thinking I shouldn't have said that. Oh, I wish I'd done that differently, overanalyzing everything. And I think that's a natural part of, part of the reason I was successful, but there's a downside to it, of course.
Yeah, we can be our own worst critics. And I guess, and that's part of it, is that when you're worried about what other people think about you, or if you make mistakes or you do something wrong, then you're spending your life always concerned probably about the wrong things. Although, as you said, in dance and in figure skating, you had to have, it was preciseness, right? It was all about every moment being exactly right. So I can imagine that that's kind of ingrained in you.
It's hard to shift away from it. You're right.
Your favorite quote, don't be delicate, be vast and brilliant. Why? Why is that your favorite quote?
It's funny. My makeup case has that on there. A fan sent me this beautiful gift one time that had that quote on a makeup bag. I was just using it because I love that idea, like that vastness and feeling free to take up space. Because especially as women, we're taught to be small, to be demure and delicate. And I think that notion of just allowing yourself the freedom, the liberation of owning really who you are and sharing that with the world, expressing that freely is really powerful.
Did that come from your mom or your upbringing? Like, where did you get that sense of I can do anything just because, because you are a woman? Did you grow up thinking anything was possible?
Yes, I did. I really did. And I attribute that to my mom, my grandmother, my sister as well. I was surrounded by really strong, independent females. And my mom was so careful to always empower me to make decisions and allow me to feel like I was equipped with the right skill set to do so. And they weren't always right, and she was there to catch me when I fell. But I look back and think, it would have been so easy for her to want to put a bubble around me and protect me. And instead, she just wanted me to be free and sort of fly. And, I followed in her footsteps in a lot of ways. She's so ambitious and she's driven and she's a real force, but does so with such kindness and generosity of heart that, I just aspire to be like her every day.
Well, I'm sure she's super proud of you, Tessa. You are like her. You just described yourself as her.
Well, I didn't mean to do that.
No, I know, but no, I know you didn't. I think, it's funny. We have these very intricate relationships with our parents, right? And they don't always end up exactly the way we want them to be. And, my daughter used to tell me that she wished I was the mom, like the grandma that would come and bake cookies for the kids. And that's just not who I am. She said, I know you're not that. And I love that you're not that, but I also sometimes want to have that, parent. And so it's really hard sometimes because they're not judging us, but we all have our aspirations for what we'd like our parents to be, I suppose.
That's so interesting. And that sounds a little like my sister. Sometimes I've heard her say that as far as how my mom parents, because she wanted us to be fearless and able to take on anything. And that meant, moving and being away from home and trying new things. And sometimes my sister has hinted at that same sentiment about wanting like a real mom,
Yeah, and I think I because I think we all have different views of what a family should be and a family unit.
Yeah.
And one of the things I had somebody tell me a long time ago was that our parents did the best job they could. Given the circumstances, given what they knew, given where they were, they did the best they could. So we have to kind of allow them to be who they were.
Yeah. And there's that interesting time in your life when you realize that they too have flaws and insecurities and defense mechanisms. And as you say, everyone is just doing the best they can, and in those particular moments, especially.
So I want to just go back, because I know you've gone through, when you were 9 years old, you wanted to be a ballerina, correct? Is that?
I did, yes.
What happened? Why did you change?
Well, I went to the National Ballet of Canada and had the most incredible summer. And at that point, I had already committed to skating with Scott. So I knew that I could skate and do ballet on the side. It would actually help my skating. But if I were to choose ballet, skating would not be in my life. It trains the complete opposite muscles. So it seemed to me that that was the path that made most sense. And also there was the competitive element. I was determined to try and be my best at whatever that was, juvenile, novice, pre-novice. But I think I really had that competitive spirit that maybe I wouldn't have been able to nurture in the ballet world.
But you're 9 years old. How do you make those choices? I mean, that's a life choice. Like, how did you know? Or did you just know?
I'm not sure that I knew as far as, the career path I was on, but I did know that I had made a commitment to Scott, and I knew that I was accountable, at least for that one season. And then after that season, when I turned 10, we decided to skate together again. And so I just knew that I had a responsibility to a partner.
Yeah, so everybody wanted you guys to be a couple, and you're probably sick of talking about, so I'm not going to go there, but everybody wanted you to be a couple. But, he's gone on to find his own happiness. You've now fallen in love. You're finding your own happiness. And now, wait a second. I got you're now Timo and Messa. Is that right?
Oh. I don't know. Is that the official?
Yes.
Okay.
Tessa and Morgan have been called Timo and so you've officially become nicknamed as a couple. So I guess that means that makes it official, right?
Uh-oh, that's some pressure there.
If that's the worst thing that happens to you, that's fine.
Right.
And then you went on, and then I think was it psychology you wanted to take in school?
Yeah, I my undergraduate degree is in psychology.
And why psychology?
I was always curious about people. I still am. I realized that a lot of my interactions have become informational interviews, and I just learned that term. I didn't know that I do that naturally, but I just want to learn about people's stories and what drives them and how people connect and what they see in one another. And I think sport probably brought that to the forefront in the sense of being able to be mentally fit and prepared to handle pressure or to face hardship. So it was, multifaceted in the way that I approached it and viewed it. And I still think it's applicable to any and every field that you head into.
How do you with psychology, do you spend a lot of times overanalyzing why people do the things you do? I mean, especially in a relationship, don't you find you're always kind of analyzing why somebody does what they're doing?
Yeah, sometimes. And I think, even with the coach-athlete relationship, we worked really hard to bring out the best in the people that were around us. So each and every coach or trainer we had, we wanted to empower them to give us the best, so that we knew that was the only way that we could succeed. And sometimes I got a little too wrapped up in what they might be going through and filtering it through that cycle. And at some point we just have to think, okay, I need to be an athlete here.
So I think I've always thought that I ruined my relationships because I always was, this is not going to sound the way I mean it to sound, but I always felt like I was kind of always not second guessing, but always guessing ahead of time what I thought was going to happen. So setting up the outcome, if they did that, then this means this. And so then I didn't allow people to really be who they are.
Totally. Well, and there's that self-fulfilling prophecy too. Your greatest fear, sometimes you manifest that. And It's interesting you mentioned that. I know with the partnership with Scott, we knew each other so well that sometimes we would make assumptions about what the other was thinking. And that was really dangerous, instead of actually verbalizing and sharing openly.
And then so you've gone from that kind of partnership into a different kind of partnership and into a different relationship. And I think you do carry those things with you, but hopefully we learn from that stuff and we can, make everything better.
Yes, I think so. I think just being cognizant of creating a really solid foundation, and then the idea of this equal partnership is, top of mind for me, and just ensuring that, both parties feel able to be totally themselves, authentically and organically themselves, and to be accepted for that is a really beautiful thing.
Yeah, it is. So you said a couple things about, curiosity and about kind of thinking about why people do what they do. And I think curiosity is the number one thing we should encourage in our children, and in people around us, just be curious. Instead of being so set in your ways, be curious about what's possible. Where does your curiosity come from? Is it always been there? Is it something you've nurtured?
I think it's this insatiable appetite for knowledge and growth. And I think that there's something to be learned from everyone. So I'm so keen to tap into whatever that is that someone might have to offer, some experience, some insight, some wisdom. And I mean, I know my story, it's boring. I would way rather talk about someone else's and glean some little nugget that I can take away and apply to my life and hopefully learn, evolve, and grow to be better. And I think a big part of that is just being open to feedback and receptive to some of the signals when people try and help you improve.
Why don't people do that more? Why do you think people are so afraid of somebody else's opinion?
I don't know. I think it's so easy to get defensive because we all have egos and we all have our own version of who we are that we tell ourselves. And that becomes more and more ingrained, as we go through life and as we go day to day and we keep telling ourselves these stories. And sometimes, I don't know about you, but sometimes I feel I just have to break free from that narrative and think that there are so many other options out there, so many other ways things could unfold. Why do you think that is, that people are quick to be on the defense?
I don't know. I often, you watch young kids and you watch, I watch my grandkids sometimes and they're so confident. And then you can almost see it as they grow older, as these kids grow older, that they become more hesitant and, more unwilling to put themselves out there because there are people out there that are mean and cruel and sometimes judge you and say things. And if you let them get in your head, it's very easy to not want to be curious anymore because you feel like you're going to be somehow shamed for asking questions or, taking feedback from other people. It's a tough world out there, I guess.
Yeah. And I think so often we want to be right. So you end up being a right fighter without really realizing, what you're missing. And it's so sad, as you say, that it comes back to how we think we're perceived by people, because that can be crippling when you're so consumed by thinking about a lens through which someone else is seeing you, and it's never accurate. And most of the time, honestly, people don't care. I think now people don't really care about anyone else. It's you do, and you're invested in some certain ways, and you might read a story, but then you move on, and there's so many other things to take in and consume.
It's so true. My dad used to tell me that I'd be a lot less worried about what other people thought about me if I knew how little they thought about me.
Right.
It's so true, right? But I don't know. We also, as somebody in the public eye, I mean, I think you spend a lot of time curating how you appear to other people too, and so you spend a lot of time making sure your social feeds are the same way, and that your voice is consistent, and that you're being true to yourself, but suddenly you change as a person, and it's really hard to shift away from what people have grown to believe about you to being something new and different and reinventing yourself. And I think that's hard.
Yeah, what an interesting concept. And it is, because it's so easy to get pigeonholed into one definable box. And I think that somehow that's comforting for a lot of people. We all do it. We want to categorize. And it's the first thing you do when someone walks up to you or when an event occurs, you do the scan and you filter it into these different categories in your brain. And that's just and we're hardwired to do that as humans, but it's hard to break free from that. And a lot of that comes down to courage and bravery and just knowing yourself and taking the risk.
I think one of the things I talk about when I talk about reinventing yourself is the need to actually say it out loud. Because if you've built yourself, if somebody only ever wants to think about you as a figure skater and that's all they want to see you as, and you decide that you're going to go off and do something completely different, which you are doing, then they have to shift their view of you, and that's hard because you've built that view of you and now you have to completely shift it, and they don't know what to expect, and so they sometimes get angry with you because you're doing something different. So I've learned that the more you say it out loud and get people used to it and say, hey, I'm going to go do these things, even if they think it's crazy, they start to get used to it and they then will accept it when you do change.
That's a good point, because so often you're 10 steps ahead, and sometimes it just takes some patience to allow people to come along with you.
What are you going to reinvent yourself as next? What are you working on now? What's Tessa of 2020? Not 2020 because it's kind of a crappy year.
Right, yeah, that's next, I think, would be businesswoman, entrepreneur, student as well, because I'm starting my MBA this fall.
Okay.
But I really see myself more in that business realm, and I just want to learn. Like, this is a new challenge, a new task for me to dive in and work my way up from the bottom.
Do you want to be an entrepreneur? Do you want to start your own business?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've always had that kind of spirit simply because I'm used to being my own boss as an athlete. I think I would have a difficult time fitting into someone else's corporate structure, although that's coming because I need experience. I mean, I have a lot of life experience and a certain skill set to apply to this new venture, but I need tangible, office experience.
Do you have an idea of what you want to do?
I have a few. I'm sort of letting them percolate, and I'm often impatient when I have ideas. I'm a big thinker, and I don't always think about the minutia or the details of it, how things would structurally unfold. But I tend to just dive in as soon as I have, something that is igniting a fire. And now I'm trying to just let it percolate and let these ideas come and go until something takes more of a firm shape.
Well, you're the same age I was when I first joined my marketing company.
Really?
Yeah. So I had gone, I did not have, first of all, I can help you maybe perhaps on business. You'll never be able to help me on figure skating. But I can definitely am happy to give whatever advice I can on the business side. But I can tell you, when I was 31, I was just starting out in business, and I had no idea what I was doing, and I didn't understand anything about really business in general, other than I really thought that people deserve to have marketing that helped them grow and build themselves and their work, and it was the only job that was kind of open to me at the time. So because I had no university degree, so I jumped in.
So did you have any idea of the trajectory that you were hoping for, or?
You know what I think we're opposite that way, where you were very disciplined and you had a focus and you had a goal with your career in figure skating. And now after that, I was much more, not random, Tessa, but I'd say I was a lot more not sure. I was kind of feeling my way as I was making my way. I honestly didn't know where it was going to head. I just I knew I needed to work. I needed to take care of my kids. I needed to do whatever I could to survive. And so it was born out of necessity. And I think lots of times when we reinvent ourselves, it comes from a place of necessity, whether it's, a divorce, or whether it's a loss of a job, or whether it's a complete need for a complete career change for other reasons, that actually pushes us to do things that we didn't think we could do because we don't have any option. And that was how it was for me. It was like I was pushed into it.
But amazing how you were constantly able to pivot and adapt. Like, you must be so apt at reading a situation and almost being a chameleon to your surroundings in order to thrive in a certain setting and then progress.
I'd say that I was really naive. So I didn't.
That helps.
It does help. Sometimes not knowing what you don't know is a good thing, right? So I was naive, and I was also I think I was also at a time when women weren't in business, and I didn't also know, I was raised to think that being a female was not going to stop me in any way, that I could do whatever it was I wanted to do. I was really fortunate to be told that. So I think I was just, I was lucky, I was tenacious, and I just happened to be, I don't know. I'm not even sure how it happened. I don't know how it happened. I wish people always say, well, what did you do? And I go, I don't know. I just.
Well, you trusted yourself, I suppose, and you were quick to invest in yourself and count on yourself. But I wonder, just when you mentioned being a woman in business, do you remember a moment when you did realize eventually that maybe you weren't meant to have the success you had, or that there was a different standard for men and women in business?
I think, listen, I think I learned of anything I learned to trust my instincts. And I really believe in that. And I know people attribute that to as a female thing, like, oh, she's emotional. She says she trusts her instincts versus facts. But I do believe in gut instinct. I do believe in that. There's a reason you get that pit in your stomach, or that sense of excitement, or that kind of push that comes from inside. And so I think listening to that instinct is super important if you're going to try and do something that you don't really know how to do it, that you trust yourself in some way. And also I was raised not to trust that other people were going to do it for me. Just like you, nobody could skate for you, right? Nobody could go do your MBA for you. You have to do these things for yourself.
Yeah, that's so powerful. It's such an interesting lesson. And it's funny when you talk about the path that you took, unconventional as it may have been. So many of the mentors that I've sort of acquired or accumulated over the years and learned from have said that they were put in positions that they weren't necessarily equipped for, and yet they just had to sort of fake it until they made it. And I can't believe the number of successful executives that have told me that same thing.
Yes, and people always think that that's just a female thing, that that fraud syndrome, that that people are going to find out I don't really belong here. But I think anyone who's been put into new positions experiences that. And frankly, you asked about being a woman, and did I ever notice that? And I don't know if it's true in the skating world, but I would say that in my case, I didn't really understand the prejudices until when I looked back on my career. And then I started to identify, oh yeah, that was because I was a woman, and right. And you kind of go, you can let that stop you, or you can just push through it, I guess. Did you have any, was there a different world for female skaters versus male skaters?
I think, well, it's interesting because, everything I achieved in sport was with a male counterpart, and we trained together, we competed together, everything was alongside Scott. And we were very equal in our partnership. I mean, we got paid the same amount, we invested the same amount of energy into it all, like everything was even, and that was, really a conscious decision on both of our parts. But I think the world itself, the skating world, is just so much more toxic for females. The male dressing room versus the female dressing room, the comfort level of friends, that you're competing against. I mean, there were just so many differences. And then often how it's portrayed in the media, it's just sometimes achievement focused on the male side and appearance focused on the female side. But I have to say, I mean, I was pretty fortunate throughout my entire career.
But you can see that just from a distance, like there's so much focus on what you're wearing, it's the same, like, yes, I mean, they're beautiful clothes, but it's so much more than that. And I guess, how do you get past that? Like, I don't know, like even some of the shots that they take, that I think there's a lot of need to change kind of how sports represents women in general. I think that's true.
Yeah, I think so. And we're making strides, and we have so many incredible role models, some fierce female athletes that are blazing new trails, but there is a gap to be made up.
Is there a cause that you care about in that? Is there something that you kind of say, I need to stand for that? Or are you?
Certainly. Yeah, I mean, there are several, but as it relates to sport, a lot of that comes down to keeping young girls in sport. And the stats are completely heartbreaking that over 50% of girls drop out of sport in high school or when they hit puberty. And, we all know the lessons that we can learn from sport, not to mention the camaraderie, the teamwork, the confidence, the sense of self-worth, and that girls are missing out on that because they don't feel good about their bodies. They're worried about being in gym clothes. They're lacking that sense of confidence. There's not a supportive network to help bolster that esteem. So that's a cause. Fit Spirit in particular is an organization that offers physical activity programs across the country to high school students and girls. And it's an amazing program to be a part of.
Yeah, because there's got to be a lot of body disorders, like the whole kind of self-image, as you said, everything that around kind of how you look and appear versus who you are. Those things are how people are kind of judging you, and it's just really unfair.
And it's ingrained in us at such a young age. Like as soon as girls hit the age of 5, studies have shown that they start to doubt their capabilities, and boys simply don't feel that. So there is a discrepancy. And then as we get older, I mean, that's just, we're inundated with messaging that continues on that same wavelength. And it's heartbreaking to see. So it is important for programs like Fit Spirit to make a difference.
It sounds, I know that you wrote a book and you went on your book tour, which must have been pretty amazing, and it did incredibly well. But do you feel like there's a book on the type of lessons that you had as a female athlete and kind of who you were? Just, I know you're always, you and Scott are always put together, and it is the story of both of you. I get it. But do you think there's another story that you could tell to help people and coach these young girls somehow?
I think in some way, and right now it might be on more of a personal level, whether it's mentoring other skaters or athletes and connecting one-on-one. But I'm amazed also just at how the lessons of sport apply to the corporate world, the business realm. A lot of speaking events or touching base with various companies, and it's an interesting thing that athletes hone their skill set. We practice all the time, and the performative element is just so slight, and yet executives are expected to perform constantly without having the time to work on their skills, recover, all of those little things that would make such a difference for high performing people. So it's an interesting thing to think about, how can that translate? Mind you, I'm not pretending to have all the answers or to be an expert in that sphere.
No, but it's a fascinating topic, because I can tell you, like, I have every boardroom I've ever been in, Tessa, like no matter what, every boardroom, there's always a sports analogy brought up. Always. There's always the guy in the room, and it's always the guy who brings up the team sports analogy, or who will use a sports story. And I used to kind of roll my eyes at it and go, okay, why is it what? Okay, that's great, interesting. But the other day, I'm lucky because I have a Peloton bike, and I ride. It's the best. Why didn't I invent that? That's the business.
Right.
Definitely. And I know I'm lucky to have it. But I have a couple girlfriends that I ride with, and one of my girlfriends is in New York, and the other one is in Ontario, and I'm here in Calgary. And we've started riding, and we've added friends in, and we've now got about a dozen of us that, we post rides, and we just ride whenever we can together. But we were talking about how the fact that we're on these rides together, and I have never met one of the gal that's in Ontario. I've never met her. I've only met her through my friend in New York, virtually. And we have become so close. And we were talking about how that camaraderie, and that sense of connection that comes through playing and doing something together, doesn't matter if you're physically in the same space, doesn't matter if you've ever connected, but you're experiencing the same adrenaline, the same goals, you're cheering for each other, you're participating together. And it dawned on me that that's what it is about. It is a sports analogy. It is about connecting together and doing things together and cheering each other on, even though we don't even know each other. And I wish life was more like that. I wish we could use that sports analogy in life, where people could start to understand how important it is to just cheer each other on, because we're all in the same game together. We're all fighting different demons. We're all, but our lives are short. Our things we can do together is finite, and not And not thinking that there's room for everybody to be at the top is such a mistake. I don't know if that makes sense.
There is room for everyone, right? And it's so interesting that you mentioned that. My agent always says that, it seems more often that men have this outlet of sport, even in rec leagues, pickup hockey or whatever it may be. And we don't have beer league yoga. So the concept is like, we don't go and do Pilates or yoga and then sit around and connect on a personal level afterwards in the locker room. And that always stuck with me. And I think there's something so unique about sharing that experience, and you're bonded in a really special way. But it's such good messaging, Arlene. You're right. I mean, we do need to uplift one another and support each other, and realize that, productivity, efficiency, success, it's greater, and we only elevate ourselves when we lift others up with us.
I don't know why it feels so hard sometimes to be kind. And I've caught myself sometimes not, I think afterwards, oh, that wasn't very kind of me to say, or why did I say that? I should have been nicer. And why was I so not nice? And I just hate that when that happens. And it happens more than I want it to happen. So it's something that I think we all have to work on, which is this notion of kindness being okay. It's not a weakness to be kind.
Right. Yeah, right? You're so right.
What's the advice you have for people who are out there thinking about, you've reinvented yourself several times, and you've still got a long way to go. And I can't wait to hear what business you do. And you can forget my advice. I don't think you need it, but I
do. I want all of it.
No. Listen, you're going to do incredibly well, whatever you do in business. But what advice do you have for people who are thinking about, through the pandemic, through everything that's going on and how they're feeling? What do you want to leave them with in terms of what you would suggest they can do to help make sure they're feeling all right and have a path forward?
Well, we feel best about ourselves when we're acting in accordance to our own values. So I think coming back to that sense of being grounded and internally really secure about what we stand for and who we are. And then no matter what you take on, whatever new venture, whatever new challenge, as long as it's in line with what you believe in, then no one can stop you, and no one can bring you down, because there's truth to it. There's authenticity to it. There's a guiding force that is really pure. And I think that helps sort of filter out the noise of the naysayers when you really believe in what it is you're trying to accomplish. And often that sense of purpose, so long as it's significant and meaningful to you, that's enough to pull you through and propel you forward.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic advice. It's funny, I just did a graduating class recording for a class of 2020, and frankly, I feel like that's exactly what I said, which is you can have education, you can have opportunity, but at the end of the day, the thing you have to hold on to above all else is your values. So I think that's the best advice ever. Tessa, thank you. I feel like I could talk to you for forever.
Likewise. I know, this felt like it was just 30 seconds.
No, like, how did that happen so fast? I'm gonna, but I wish you well, and I hope you stay safe. And I can't wait to meet your new beau, and I can't wait to. I'll come to Vancouver, and we'll get together again.
With your daughter, that'd be great. We'll catch up over a glass of wine or two.
Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds perfect.
Thank you, Arlene. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Tessa. Isn't Tessa just amazing? She has such an incredible, almost unshakable sense of self. Don't be delicate. Right? I might get that tattooed somewhere. I think that's what I love most about her, and what made me cry just thinking about her performances. It isn't just that she's a brilliant skater, but she exudes authenticity and self-awareness. She said something at the end that has really stuck with me. She said, "We feel best about ourselves when we act in accordance to our own values." I think that's such an incredible piece of wisdom, and it's why I want to have these conversations, why I want to talk to people, not just on a surface level, but to really drill down. The work of reinvention requires that we know ourselves and our values, but they can sometimes be hidden from us, and that's why self-examination, really looking at yourself in the mirror, is so incredibly important. Not just to affirm your talents and examine your flaws, but to figure out what you really, really want. What's at your core? What's in your soul? And because Tessa's been so true to herself, she can inspire a nation. Anyways, I've got no doubt she's going to be an incredible entrepreneur. I'm already looking forward to seeing her as a dragon someday very soon. Also, the organization she mentioned is Fit Spirit. That's at fitspirit.ca. Please check that out. And girls, stay in sports. Thanks to Tessa and to Tellus. Go find your values and act in accordance to them. I love that. And thanks so much to you for listening. Stay safe and stay human. This podcast is made possible by the great folks at Venture Communications. Thanks to our engineers, writers, producers, and all the folks who work really hard to bring you these great stories of reinventions each and every week.